I always thought if my life ever unraveled, it would be loud. Something dramatic, something you'd see in a movie. Shouting in the rain, tears on the floor, maybe a broken dish or two. Turns out, when the world falls apart, it starts quietly. With routines. With glances that last too long. With a man named Bud. My name's Nick Turner. I grew up in a town where everyone knows your middle name and your first heartbreak. Mandy and I met in high school. She had braces, I had a mullet, and somehow we still managed to find each other cute. We dated on and off through college, and after graduation we made it official. Married in the church where her parents tied the knot. Then bought an old storefront downtown and opened Turner's General Goods. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. The store was our baby, since we never had any of our own. Just didn't work out that way, though we tried. We poured ourselves into it. Long hours, inventory runs, fixing broken shelves, chatting with customers we saw more often than our own families. We were solid. At least that's what I believed. Life settled into a rhythm. I'd open up the shop at 6:30 sharp every morning. Mandy would come in around 9 after her run and morning coffee with her friend Janelle. I handled the hardware and tools section, ropes, flashlights, those oddly satisfying rows of screws and bolts, while Mandy ran the front counter and curated our home goods corner with handmade candles and knickknacks she found at local fairs. Our biggest accomplishment wasn't the store itself, though. It was that we made something steady. People came to us for more than light bulbs and tea towels. They came because Turner's felt familiar, comfortable, and I took pride in that. Then Bud came back. He used to be my fishing buddy. Went to high school with Mandy too, though they hadn't spoken in years. Or so I thought. He moved away right after graduation, ended up working construction jobs out in the Midwest, got married to a woman named Carla, and only showed up now and again for weddings or funerals. But that fall, he came back for good. Said his dad's health was declining and he wanted to be closer. Bud was the kind of guy who could walk into a room and act like he'd never left. Everyone liked him. Maybe too much. Including Mandy. Started small. He came into the store a couple times a week. Said he was helping out with a house renovation across town. Then it became daily. Always around the same time Mandy was behind the counter. He'd lean over, whisper something, and she'd laugh. The kind of laugh she hadn't used with me in months. But I didn't think much of it. Not yet. One Tuesday afternoon, Mandy said she needed to stay late to reorganize the storage room. Too many shipments all at once, she said. I offered to help, but she told me to go home and rest, said I looked tired. I didn't argue. That became her new routine. Staying late once or twice a week, sometimes more. Said she liked the quiet, could get more done. The changes came slowly, like a shift in weather. She started wearing more makeup to work, spritzing perfume she used to save for date nights. She stopped reaching for my hand when we walked to the car, or touching my back when she passed me in the kitchen. She smiled less, unless Bud was around. Then came the coincidence. One night I was driving home from my brother's place. Took the back road because of construction. That's when I saw it. Bud's truck, parked behind our store. Lights were on in the upstairs office. I hadn't known Mandy was working late that night. She told me she was at Janelle's helping with a project. I parked across the street and waited. And then I saw them. Her silhouette against the blinds. His behind hers. Moving. There's a kind of stillness that comes over you in moments like that. Not anger. Not tears. Just a hollow sort of silence. Like someone turned the volume off on your life. I didn't get out of the car. Didn't pound on the door. I drove home. Sat in the dark. Didn't say a word when she got in late, claiming traffic and too much wine. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because if Mandy thought I was blind, well, I was gonna let her keep thinking that. While I made plans of my own. I knew one thing for sure. Revenge isn't about rage. It's about precision. And Bud? He wasn't the only one in that marriage with a soft spot for good conversation. Carla always did say she appreciated a man who listened. I saw Carla the next morning. She walked into the store right on schedule. Every Thursday like clockwork. She'd come in for her herbal tea and that handmade lavender soap Mandy stocked in the back. Only this time, I stepped out from behind the tools aisle and said I'd help her find it. "Nick," She smiled, surprised. You usually leave Mandy to handle the nice-smelling stuff. I smiled back. Thought I'd try something different. We chatted. Nothing serious. But I listened. Asked her about her work at the library, her latest book club pick. She lit up. Carla always had a warmth to her that made people feel seen. And maybe that's what Bud never really appreciated. He got distracted by the surface. I was learning to look deeper. I didn't push anything. That's the thing about real revenge, it's like gardening. You don't force it. You plant a seed and let it grow. Back home, Mandy was the same strange version of herself. Kind, distracted, busy. She talked about expanding the shop's craft section. I nodded. Asked questions. Smiled. Pretended I hadn't seen her wrapped up in Bud's arms just days earlier. She kissed me goodnight and rolled over like it was any other evening. Meanwhile, I was thinking about Carla. Wondering if she knew. If she suspected. If Bud came home with the same excuses Mandy gave me. Over the next couple weeks, I kept the act going. At work, I started chatting with Carla more, complimented her scarf, asked about her garden. She'd laugh and call me a sweetheart. She started swinging by more often. Said she liked how calm the store felt. Then one afternoon I saw her alone at the town diner. Just her and a coffee. I didn't plan to walk over. But I did. Mind some company? I asked. She looked up, surprised again, but smiled. Please. That conversation? It changed everything. She started with books. I asked about Bud. Her face shifted. She didn't say much, just that things had been off. So I said it, I think there's something you should know. And just like that, two people betrayed by the same pair found themselves sitting in a booth, sipping coffee, staring at the pieces of a life that used to make sense. I didn't show her proof. Didn't have to. We both knew. You could feel the truth in the silence between us. And maybe that's where revenge really begins, not in what you do, but who you choose to share your truth with. Carla reached across the table. Touched my hand. Nick, she said, soft as a whisper. They don't deserve us. I didn't disagree. It started with coffee, but soon it turned into walks around the lake. Carla and I, two quietly broken people walking in sync, saying more in silence than we ever did in words. At first, it felt like therapy. She'd ask how I was sleeping, I'd ask about her latest book. We'd vent about Bud and Mandy like coworkers sharing war stories. Then came the little things. She'd bring me a sandwich from that new deli near the library. I'd leave a cup of her favorite green tea on the counter before she walked into the store. There was something tender in those small acts, an understanding that went deeper than pity or sympathy. One night, we stayed out later than usual. The sun had dipped behind the hills and the street lamps buzzed overhead. Carla stopped walking, looked up at me, and said, "This is the most seen I've felt in years." I didn't have the right words, so I just pulled her close. Not a kiss. Just a moment, two people holding on to each other in the middle of everything that had fallen apart. Back home, Mandy was already in bed. Her phone face down on the nightstand, probably silenced so Bud could message her without waking me. I watched her sleep for a moment, wondering how we got so far from where we started. I didn't feel the rage anymore. Just emptiness. That weekend, Mandy asked if I wanted to go to the farmer's market with her. We haven't done anything together in a while, she said. I went. Played my part. Held the basket, smiled for the neighbors. She slipped her arm through mine like nothing had changed. It felt like being a mannequin in someone else's love story. And then I saw Bud at the corner of the flower stand buying roses. For a moment, he froze. So did I. He gave me a nod like we were old pals. I gave him one back. Mandy didn't see him or pretended not to. But her grip on my arm tightened just slightly. Enough for me to know she'd seen him too. Later that night, I texted Carla. Me, you okay? Carla, been better. You? Me, same. Want to talk? We met at her place. Not the library. Not the diner. Her house. Carla greeted me in sweatpants and a sweatshirt that swallowed her frame. She looked like someone who had finally stopped pretending. She poured us both a drink, whiskey, which surprised me, and we sat on her porch swing. I think he's in love with her, she said after a long pause. He's barely here anymore. I nodded. I think she loves the way he makes her feel. Not him. Carla turned to me, her eyes wet. What do we do with all of this? And maybe it was the drink or the way the night air softened the sharp edges of my thoughts, but I leaned in. She didn't pull back. Our kiss wasn't passionate or even hungry. It was slow, hesitant, like two people checking if it was still possible to be wanted. We didn't rush things. We didn't even go inside. But something shifted that night. Revenge wasn't the goal anymore. Connection was. And as strange as it sounds, falling for the woman who was supposed to be a pawn in my plan, That might have been the only honest thing left in my life. The next morning, things felt different. I still opened the store at 6:30 sharp, still restocked the tool aisle like nothing had changed. But inside, something had. Carla texted me around 10. Just a simple, "Thank you for last night." I stared at it for a while before typing, "Anytime," and I meant it. Mandy came in around 9:30, 20 minutes later than usual, still dressed like she was auditioning for a lifestyle magazine. She kissed my cheek and chirped, "Sorry I'm late. Traffic. Traffic. In a town with 3 stoplights." Sure. I handed her the receipts without a word and went to sweep the back. I didn't need to confront her yet. I was collecting moments, evidence, distance. It's strange, watching someone unravel right in front of you without even noticing they're doing it. She was too busy living in whatever world Bud had promised her. But Carla, she was becoming the one thing Mandy hadn't been in a long time. Honest. We started having lunch together once a week. Sometimes out in public. Sometimes in the break room behind the store. And people noticed. Small towns are like that. Rumors bloom quicker than flowers in spring. Janelle, Mandy's best friend, gave me a look one afternoon when we crossed paths outside the store. "You and Carla getting close?" she asked casually, but her tone was anything but. I shrugged. "She's good company." Janelle nodded slowly. "Just be careful." I could tell she knew. Maybe not everything, but something. Mandy's late nights became more frequent. She started offering to close up without me. I let her. Every time she walked out the door, I'd make note of it. Not out of spite, out of strategy. One night I finally followed her. Parked a few streets down. Walked the rest of the way. She wasn't at the shop. She was at Bud's rental. Lights on. Her car out front. Curtains drawn. I didn't go to the door. I didn't need to. I took a photo, then turned and walked away. That night I didn't go home. I texted Mandy that I was working late inventory with our supplier. Then I drove to Carla's. She didn't ask questions when she opened the door. We didn't talk much. We just existed together quietly, easily. She made tea, we sat on her couch, and for the first time in a long while, I let myself exhale. She curled up next to me like it was the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it was. We didn't need plans. We already had an understanding. They broke us, but we didn't have to stay broken. That night, as we both drifted off in the soft glow of her living room lamp, I realized something. I wasn't getting revenge anymore. I was rebuilding. And sometimes the best revenge is simply being happy without them. They say secrets have a shelf life. Leave them on the wrong one too long, and eventually, they stink up the whole place. And ours were starting to reek. I wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Carla and I would go for drives outside town, share quiet dinners at her place, and linger a little too long when saying goodbye. We hadn't crossed every line yet, but we were towing the edge, and everyone could see the footprints. Meanwhile, Mandy started overcompensating. She'd cook more, leave sweet notes on the mirror like we were newlyweds again. Even packed me lunch one day with a heart drawn on the napkin. It almost made me laugh. Almost. But the truth is, guilt doesn't always show up in apologies. Sometimes it shows up in grand gestures meant to distract from dirty footprints. I didn't say a word, just watched. Bud? He was getting sloppy. Loud in public, touchy in private. One of our part-time cashiers, young guy named Dylan, pulled me aside after a shift. "Hey, I think I saw Mandy and that Bud guy, being close, behind the shop." I nodded. "Thanks, Dylan. Appreciate you telling me." He looked nervous. "You okay?" "Getting there." I had more than enough now. Pictures. Witnesses. A quiet file I kept in a folder on my home computer labeled wiring instructions. Subtle. But this wasn't about catching her anymore. It was about ending it the right way. Carla and I met at the park that Sunday. The air was crisp. One of those fall days that feels honest, no frills, no pretending. We sat on a bench and watched kids play while leaves danced around our feet. "I told him," she said softly. "Told Bud I knew." I turned to her, surprised. "He tried to lie at first," she said, staring straight ahead. Then he got angry, told me it didn't mean anything. Like that was supposed to make it better. "What are you going to do?" I asked. She took a breath. "Leave. Soon." I nodded. "Same." And just like that, 2 broken marriages were finally, officially collapsing. That night, Mandy came home late, said Janelle needed help organizing her garage. "Strange," I said. "I just saw Janelle at the store. She didn't mention anything." Mandy froze, and in that silence, something passed between us. Not a confession, not denial, just the quiet acknowledgement that we both knew this dance was over. "I think we need to talk," she said finally. "I think we passed talk about 10 lies ago," I replied. She looked down. "Is there someone else?" I didn't answer, just let the silence speak for me. She nodded almost sadly. "I guess I deserve that." For the first time in months, I looked at her, really looked at her, not as my wife but as someone I used to know, someone who made a mistake, and then kept making it. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water and said, "Let's figure out how to end this without turning it into a war." She didn't argue. And in that moment, I realized something. The hardest part of betrayal isn't what it does to your heart. It's what it does to your memories. Suddenly, all the good times come with a question mark. But at least now, I had answers. Mandy and I didn't talk for a few days after that last quiet confrontation. It wasn't exactly the cold shoulder, more like mutually agreed silence. Like 2 business partners preparing to dissolve a failing company. The mornings were the worst. She'd still make coffee, still ask if I wanted toast like nothing had changed. But everything had. I answered in nods or one-word replies, and we moved through the kitchen like ghosts occupying the same haunted house. I think that's what betrayal does. It doesn't burn the place down. It just strips the walls bare and leaves you shivering in a place you once called home. Meanwhile, Carla and we weren't quite in a romance, not yet. But we were something. Something comforting. Something real. I'd stop by after work some nights. Sometimes we'd just talk on the phone, both sitting in separate dark rooms, speaking in low tones like teenagers hiding from their parents. She was packing, quietly, carefully. No announcements. Just sorting books into boxes and wrapping glassware like she wasn't breaking her life apart piece by piece. She told me she was thinking of moving closer to her sister in Kentucky. "Fresh start," she said. I told her I understood. But the truth was, that stung more than I expected. One Thursday, Mandy came home early, said she wasn't feeling well. She looked too tired, pale, worn thin around the eyes. I was working in the garage when she stepped out, holding something in her hands. It was a photo. Us from the first year we opened the shop. Standing in front of Turner's General Goods with big smiles and fresh paint behind us. "I found this in the drawer," she said. "Figured you'd want it." I took it from her. Looked at it longer than I meant to. "We were happy then," she said quietly. "Yeah," I replied. "We were." She didn't cry. Neither did I. We just stood there for a minute, 2 people sifting through the wreckage. That weekend, we sat down at the kitchen table and made it official. No yelling, no accusations. Just 2 pens, some paperwork, and a few sighs. I had already spoken to a lawyer. She said she'd get one too. We agreed to split the store evenly. She wanted out of it anyway, said it had become too tied to memories she didn't want to keep. I offered to buy her out. She said yes. By Sunday night, she had moved into a friend's guest room on the other side of town. She left a box of old letters and photos on the dining room table, labeled "Yours." I didn't open it. Not then. The house was quiet. I thought I'd enjoy that more than I did. That night, Carla called. "I signed the papers today," she said. So did we. Silence on the line. Not the awkward kind, the kind where someone's breathing with you. "Want company?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I'd like that." She showed up in jeans and a cardigan, carrying takeout and 2 bottles of wine. We sat on the back porch and ate off paper plates. Talked about nothing and everything. Laughed more than we had in weeks. Somewhere around midnight, she fell asleep on my shoulder. And for the first time in months I felt peace. Not because I'd won. Not because I'd gotten revenge. But because I'd stopped pretending. Sometimes the loudest victories come after the quietest exits. And this was just the beginning. After Mandy left, I expected some kind of cinematic collapse. You know, the dramatic sobbing, the shouting matches in the driveway, maybe me hurling a flower pot at the fence just to feel something. But life doesn't hand out scripts, it just keeps going, even when you feel like stopping. Monday morning, I stood in the doorway of the store, key in hand, heart somewhere in my boots. I unlocked it anyway, flipped the sign to open. The hum of the lights, the soft clatter of the register, the familiar creak in the floorboards. It all sounded different. Not sad, not even angry, just mine. I spent most of that first week doing little things. Adjusting displays, clearing out some of the overly curated home decor stuff Mandy used to fuss over. Replaced it with a shelf of classic tools and multi-tools, the kind of stuff that felt practical, grounded. Like starting over without making an announcement. Carla stopped by on Wednesday. She didn't say much, just walked in, looked around, gave me a little smile like we were both in on some secret. She picked up a wind chime she liked and helped me restock the coffee beans near the register. Later, we sat out back on the bench behind the store. That bench had a lot of memories, most of them with Mandy, sure. But that day, it felt like something else. Something new. You doing okay? Carla asked, brushing a leaf off her jeans. I nodded. Somehow, yeah. It's quiet, but not the bad kind. She smiled. Yeah, I get that. We talked about simple things, how her house felt too big now, how my porch light needed replacing, how we both hated the sound of silence until we didn't. Then she looked at me and said, you know, I'm not sure I know who I am without all the pain. I let that hang in the air a bit before answering. Maybe that's the best part. We get to figure it out. That night she came over. We cooked dinner together. Well, she cooked and I mostly just grated cheese and made bad jokes. We danced in the kitchen to an old song that came on the radio, both of us out of step but laughing like kids. Afterward, we sat on the couch watching a movie we'd both seen a dozen times. Somewhere during the second act, she leaned her head on my shoulder. I didn't move. Didn't think. Just let it happen. When she fell asleep there, soft breaths rising and falling in rhythm with mine, I realized something I hadn't dared hope for in months. This wasn't about replacing what I lost. It was about discovering something better. Something honest. Something earned. The kind of peace that doesn't come in one grand sweep, but in steady, quiet moments when you stop trying to fix everything and just let yourself be. Carla didn't fix me. And I didn't fix her. But we were showing up. And sometimes that's enough to start again. By the time April rolled around, spring hit the town like a deep exhale. Windows opened. Lawnmowers hummed. And people started talking again. Whispering mostly. About Mandy. About Bud. About Carla and me. It wasn't cruel. Just curious. That small-town flavor of gossip served with a smile and a side of bless your heart. You could feel it walking into the diner or hearing the slight pause when someone asked, so how've you been holding up? I didn't flinch at it anymore. Didn't feel the need to explain. You live in a fishbowl long enough, you stop caring who's watching. The thing about the town, though, is it remembers everything, the good, the bad, and the embarrassing in between. And for years, we'd been the model couple. Turner's General Goods. Mandy and Nick. The folks who stayed when others left. When that image cracked, people noticed. Mandy moved in with a cousin 2 towns over. Quiet exit, no grand goodbye. Word was she tried patching things up with Bud, but it didn't take. Too much fire and not enough foundation. I heard he left a month after she did, something about a business opportunity in Texas. Sounded like running if you asked me. I stayed. Not out of pride. Out of roots. Carla did too, at least for now. She still talked about Kentucky sometimes, but she stopped packing boxes. We took things slow. Not because we had to, but because we wanted to. Our afternoons together became part of a quiet rhythm. Coffee on the back porch, quick lunches at the shop, evenings where we'd sit in companionable silence, just glad not to be pretending anymore. Then one Saturday, something unexpected happened. Janelle, Mandy's closest friend, the same one who had once warned me with a look, walked into the store. Alone. She didn't browse. Just walked up to the counter where I was stacking receipts. Hey, Nick, she said. Hey. She looked uncomfortable, shifting her purse from one shoulder to the other. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I raised an eyebrow. For what? For knowing, she said. Not everything, but enough. And not saying anything. I studied her for a second. Would it have changed anything? She shook her head. Probably not. but it still didn't sit right. I nodded slowly. Well, I appreciate you saying it. That means something. Janelle smiled, small, genuine. Carla's good for you, by the way. She is. I hope you get to be happy, Nick. Me too. And with that she left. No fanfare. No awkward goodbyes. Just a simple closing of an old chapter. Later that night, I told Carla about the visit. She leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded, eyes soft. So what now? I thought for a second. I think now we live? Not for the past. Not in spite of it. Just forward. She nodded. Sounds about right. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was surviving anymore. I felt like I was home. May came in like a promise. Sunlight through the curtains. A breeze that didn't sting anymore. There's something about spring that makes even the old feel new again. Or maybe it just gives you permission to look forward instead of back. Carla and I started putting real names to the things we were building. We stopped dodging the word relationship and just let it be what it was. Not a rebound. Not a patch. Just a real, honest connection. Forged in the fire and somehow still standing. She moved a few of her books into my place. Started leaving a toothbrush in the bathroom. At first it felt strange. Like I was erasing Mandy, replacing her. But then I realized I wasn't replacing anything. I was evolving. You don't erase the past. You learn how to carry it better. One night we sat on the porch, legs tangled, her head on my shoulder. A blanket pulled over both of us as the sun dipped behind the trees. You ever think, she said, that if none of it happened, we never would have found this? I nodded. All the time. Doesn't make it right, she added. No, I said, but it makes surviving it mean something. Turner's General Goods kept going. I hired a local high school kid part-time, Logan, whose dad used to fix our roof every winter. Smart kid. Honest. Wanted to learn how to run a small business. I started seeing myself in him. Young, hopeful. Still figuring it out. Sometimes I'd catch Carla watching us from the register, smiling like she was seeing something she didn't know she missed. She started helping with the store more. Rearranged some shelves. Suggested adding local honey and handmade ceramics. Folks loved it. And one day, the town stopped whispering. Stopped waiting for drama. We just became normal again. Not Mandy and Nick. Not Bud and Carla. Just Nick and Carla. Two people who'd been through hell and decided not to stay there. That summer, we took a road trip, just a few days up through the mountains. Nothing fancy. We ate at roadside diners, hiked to waterfalls, stayed at a B&B where the floors creaked and the pancakes were homemade. On the last night, we sat under the stars on the hood of my truck. She turned to me and said, I love this life. And I realized so did I. Not because it was perfect. Not because it made sense. But because it was ours. There's a calm that settles over you when you stop trying to rewrite the past and just accept the page you're on. That's where I found myself. Not healed, not whole, but grounded. It's funny, looking back, how a single moment, a silhouette behind a drawn blind, can fracture everything you thought was solid. And yet, it's not the breaking that defines you. It's what you do with the pieces. The divorce was finalized in the fall. Clean, quiet. Mandy sent a card, just a line wishing me peace and happiness. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left to say. Bud, from what I hear, hasn't stuck anywhere long since. His name still comes up now and then, usually in sentences that start with, "You remember Bud?" and end with a knowing shake of the head. He was always more flash than foundation. Carla stayed. We didn't rush into marriage or matching keychains. But she's part of my life now in the way that matters most. Steady, kind, and honest. We built something out of the ashes. Something real. Not perfect, but real. Turner's General Goods had its best year since we opened. I gave Logan a raise, and he started bringing in ideas from his business class at the community college. We added a Saturday morning coffee cart out front. Folks love it. Life feels like a small-town rhythm again. People wave when they pass. Ask about Carla. Ask about the store. And I've started answering without thinking about who I used to be. There's one photo that still hangs in the back office. Not of Mandy and me, but of the store on opening day. Just the storefront, Fresh paint, sun bouncing off the glass. I kept it not to remember the marriage, but the hope. Because even if that part of my life ended, it started with something good. And that still matters. Sometimes, when Carla locks up at night and we walk out together, hand in hand, I look at that picture on the way out. Not with sadness, with gratitude, not for the betrayal, but for what it revealed. Because sometimes the life you build after the storm ends up being the one you were meant for all along. And maybe, just maybe, the last chapter doesn't need a period. Maybe it just needs a deep breath and a good morning.